We are bringing back Pitch Essentials. Yes, it's coming back this February. After witnessing such incredible results from our October cohort, we're eager to bring you new case studies and share the latest of our learnings. For all the details, head over to the show notes or go to course.twolovestudio.com/pitch-essentials. Now, let's jump into the show. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Fire. I'm with my friend and fellow food photographer, Rachel Korinek.
Hi, everybody. So thrilled to be back today, Shelly.
We're going to dive into our favorite topic, pitching. We've seen some amazing results from our workshop we did back in October, and we figured we should come back and share some of the results that we're seeing from what we did.
Yeah, perfect. I think that is really exciting because pitching is not everybody's favorite topic. And I think a lot of the times I hear about pitching, it's like, I'm not hearing back, or I did all this work and I didn't hear back. So it's like, we want to share some of the really cool stuff that we're seeing for pitching with some of the decks that we've used in our Pitch Essentials class.
Yeah. And it's been really fun to see the students go off and create their various decks. And more than anything, I don't know about you, but I really enjoyed being in our accountability group, which we called our pro track, and really helping people nuance, like really get into the nuance and the detail of what goes into their deck and what's going to make them shine. I said this before we started recording, but I know numerous people you had gone through and helped kind of repaginate images, and I helped with like text styles and just kind of overall design and flow, and reminding people to add certain things into certain parts of the deck to really make them stand out for like how they process things and how they work with clients.
Yeah, and I think between the both of us, we've had decades of experience across different markets. I think that's really valuable to bring to a deck and see what's working. And as a photographer, sometimes you are very attached to the work that you want to put in to the decks and forgets other things. So it's great to have other fresh eyes, essentially. One interesting thing that was coming up quite a few times was people was like, oh, that image is really old. But it was like, that doesn't matter. It's still really strong and it still really represents who you are and the work you want to do. So sometimes there's just little nuggets like that you just need someone to uncover for you. So that was really fun. Super fun part of the workshop.
Yeah.
I can talk about some of the feedback I've been hearing, which is exciting because, I went in this new direction with my work. My portfolio is all ready and I'm excited to pitch more in 2026. So it's great to see that this is working so far. So it's interesting. Like, it's the end of the year. I've had quite an influx of inquiries for Q1 of 2026, which is a great way to pitch people, like to try and set it up for the new year. And everybody's really busy, but we've had people reaching out and sending them my decks. And hearing replies at this busy time also shows you that, you're doing something right. So I had someone reach out to me who found me on Google, wanting some certain photography. So I sent them like a small deck and my studio guide, and they did get back to me and they had written that the presentation looked really beautiful. And thank you so much for taking the time to put this together. So clients are really seeing the value of me tailoring different pictures to them so they could really see all the information and that I'd understand, what their concept was going to be and the sort of assets they were going to look at. So that's something I've heard a few times. I had another client who, this is word for word, I'm really impressed. Your pricing and workflow was really, really clear. Thank you so much for putting so much care into this. It really stood out. And some other parts of the email, I could see that this client was asking a number of photographers for their pricing, or for, like, what does it look like to work together? So the fact that I was able to really show clear workflows, clear pricing, how we could work together very clearly and really stand out was, I think, is such a win.
I'm just curious for those that don't remember, like what were you sending before that you would say is like a contrast? What's the compare and contrast between then and now?
I say I didn't have a capabilities deck, like I call it a studio guide, because clients don't necessarily know what a capabilities deck is. So, it's really tailoring my images to that specific need, sharing more about how the process of working together goes, throwing some personal projects in there, how we can move forward. As to before, I probably was just sending an estimate without that visual representation of the value, or pointing them to my portfolio, which more than likely they've already been through. And, your portfolio is a breadth of work that shows who you are as an artist. It's not necessarily tailored to a food blog client or to a ready to drink client. So I think that's been the differentiation between before and now, is just those little things coming together in that studio guide to really show that value.
Yeah, I think the other thing I find interesting is the piece which sometimes gets lost, right? People might go to your portfolio and they see your images, but they don't know necessarily how you think about your work, how you work with the client, what is your timeline, what's your
Exactly.
process, and
Yeah.
your different skill sets that you can bring to the forefront, which sounds like that's exactly what you articulated in your capabilities deck, aka studio guide.
Yeah. And I think, like, a lot of us work for food blogs. So that really stands out because every food blog has a different brand. They have a different focus with like dishes that they create. Like some people have baking blogs, some people have like gluten-free blogs. So they're very specific and niche down. So I wanted within my studio guide to show different um, types of images that I would create for like savory or for salads or for the baking aspect of sweets and drinks, so that I could bring those together because they're not necessarily my portfolios, that clients can see um, what I do. And also with food blogs, a lot of the time you have process shots. Definitely not on my portfolio. So, like, how you want them to see how you can bring all those pieces together. And I think putting it into a deck, that's either attached to an email or has a link in the email, the client can just see that all that information condensed really clearly in one place. They don't have to go searching for it or keep asking for it too.
Yeah, and I think we saw this with our students as well. Like I know Yon, for instance, right? She didn't have this type of deck either. And we saw a huge change in the way that she presented her work, so much so that she got a client to bring her on board after 24 hours of, she sent the deck and within
Yeah,
24 hours had that signed contract.
it is amazing. Yeah. So, like, some of the results that we've been seeing, um, Yoni landing that job within 24 hours it's incredible regardless of who you are. Like, for as photographers, like, one, we're really trying to just hear back from the client, but also to land that job as well is incredible. And I think you have to show um, that visual value with clients so they can, obviously, this client could really see what she was proposing, what the creative concept would be look like, what the assets and the delivery on those things were. So they didn't have to really ask any other questions. They could just be like, this is exactly what I want and let's work together.
Yeah, and I remember when she came into the group, like this was already an inquiry that had come in and she wasn't sure what to send. She was like,
Mm-hmm.
do I just
Mm-hmm.
send
Yeah.
numbers? Do I just send like images? And then, she put together an incredible capabilities deck and that with some suggestions on creative direction. And that really, that sold them.
Mm. And I think that's one very powerful thing about working in a environment like this, where you have this group coaching, is you can really get down and look at what the client is asking for, and then we're building the decks as we go, so we could really tailor it to this um, clients. I've talked about a few different decks that I've done, an amazing result that I had was I really put together a tailored pitch for a client that I didn't have that specific deck looking the way that I wanted it to. So when I got this inquiry, I was like, this is a time for me to put this together because I had it on my to-do list, but I just didn't get around to it. And I was really happy with it. Like it took me a little bit to create, but like now I've got it. And I had a reply from the client within 1 hour asking to engage in a paid test shoot, which is incredible. 1 hour.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's almost like they were just sitting there waiting for you to reply.
And I think that's the thing about, really showing that visual value. Like if we can just sidestep for a second, is like there's a huge conversation about AI and all these things. And I think as an artist, connecting on that human level, but really showing our visual value is what's going to be needed at this time. More, I think it's just like on steroids. We've always needed to do that, but it's just really, really important right now.
Well, and I think that is the humanness, right? I see this conversation come up multiple times in this last month, even several times this last week. Is there needs to be this humanness that comes through. To your point
Yeah.
about like AI, and I had a conversation with someone about he worked in fashion and a lot of e-com types of things, and he's like, people kept saying to him like, oh, you're going to get replaced by AI, like AI is going to be able to do this, and he's like, what people don't understand is that it's still way too expensive to do AI. You're not going to
Hmm.
get exactly what you want, that you can have a creative team come together and really do something amazing and beautiful that you can't quite get AI to do. Um, and so to your point of like, can you put together a really beautiful presentation that shows your work and how you create, is something AI can't do.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think it comes down to a lot of like, why are we using AI? And a lot of it comes down to money and time. So I had a client who um, was a new client. I sort of saw some of my work on social media, and when we were discussing what it looks like to work together, they had said to me, I've seen your work on social media. Send me a studio guide. Like I can see that you provide this high quality. This was the comment, the high quality service. And so I think they can see, my prices are going to be higher than some people's, but they could really see that that investment was going to result in high quality images. Having these little pieces put together, like I always say with photography, it's lots of little things done well coming together. So I think in pitching too, you have all of these things coming together that's tailored for that specific client that's going to help you stand out and provide that quality service, or like for the client to understand that you are providing a quality service.
Yeah, and I think that goes across any of the types of pitching we've talked about in the past, right? So whether it's a cold pitch where you're sending more your capabilities guide, or you're pitching an idea for editorial, or to, let's say you're a food blogger, hey, I can provide X, Y, and Z style of this. I could do these types of shots. I could do finished shots, but also process shots. But also like if you're getting the creative direction from somebody, and I mentioned this before, is, putting together like a treatment deck of how are you going to then take their creative idea and then break it down. Um, because you want to have that same idea and touch points and human collaboration pieces like in that deck to show
Hmm.
about how you're going to work as a team player and bring that to life.
That's really what I find interesting about that is I've been sharing a little bit of this process and some of the clients that I've been pitching on social media. And I have had people reach out and say, but why are you giving them creative direction before they've said they worked with you or you signed a contract? And so that is really interesting because one, I think you do need to show your value before you get to that stage. But it is a fine line between doing this whole creative for them as if you were an art director versus getting some information out of them and showing visually like a direction that you can go in. So one thing adore about these templates we use in Canva is I can literally have copies. And so within the one document, I have different decks. I have my food deck, my blog deck, like a ready to drink product clients. And then I can also just quickly move a couple of pages around and bring some ideas to that to show the client. So it can be that you can also cut these decks down into smaller chunks to really fit where in that process you are. So I'm not doing a full art direction for a client. I'm just taking some of their ideas, and because sometimes they'll say like, well, how much does it cost to work with you? And it's like, well, what do you want to do? Like if we do this and it's one day, like this is the ballpark. If you want to do 3 sets that are more involved, then maybe we're looking at 3 days. So you can just sort of show the clients the visual direction of your prices as well. And I think it's really great that there are so many uses that we can use these decks for to really show the clients. And I think that brings you across as like you are really professional. And that's why you have like the prices that you do.
Yeah, I think your point about you gotta show them, right? We talked about this in the class about like you gotta paint this picture for your client so that they can see it. And to your point of like you gotta give them a little bit of something. Like if they're coming to you and they're like, hey, we have this seasonal drink campaign when we're doing 5 signature cocktails and we want it to be a really simple, minimal scene,
Mhm.
then you could say, oh, well, to do that, it's going to look like this. But then if they come back and they say, but we also have this idea of having like a bartender and, this more like built out scene. And then you're going to say, well, that's going to look like this. And here's some pictures that you might have had. And here's like a difference of pricing. You're reflecting back what it is that they want, not so much fully fleshing out that idea at that moment in time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's just giving those little tastes, I think, of like that so you can get into a bigger conversation. One thing I love about how you sort of look at pitching is, you're not sending a client necessarily a deck and getting back a reply that's like, great, let's work together. A lot of cold pitches is like these touch points that become this larger conversation. So one of our photographers who took our course, one of the results that I think is amazing is that she was not hearing back from people. Then she took our course, she created all these decks, and now she's hearing back from people. So we've really got to get over that first piece to start a conversation. Because, if you do have clients that are price shopping, it is difficult to get them in because maybe they're just really price sensitive. So like hearing back from people just allows the conversation to continue. There's more of an investment from the client in terms of time and understanding who you are as an artist, which will hopefully lead to more jobs.
Yeah, it's getting away from that whole ghosting conversation that we keep hearing over and over again. And I think
Mhm.
when you do hear back from somebody, even if it's like not right now or, we don't have a campaign right now, you know that they are paying attention and that gives you more fuel for the fire to like keep them in mind for, the next outreach.
Yeah, which is, the feedback we're hearing is like, this looks really beautiful. I can see you put time and quality into this. And so standing out, even if there isn't a campaign now, that's what you want because you want them to be reminded of you for when that comes up. Um, so I know you had an amazing result with some of our decks, Shelly, as you were sort of like acting as an agent for another photographer.
So she had an inquiry come in and they wanted to hop on a pre-call. And I sat in on the pre-call off camera just to give some direction and guidance during that call. And after the call, I said, okay, well, we got to put a treatment together. Got to take this and really flesh out this idea and show them how you would do it. I grabbed our treatment template and pulled in her imagery and wrote some copy from her based on copy that she already had written on her website and then gave it to her as a draft to look at. And while I was working on that, she could start working on numbers, which was great.
Yeah,
And then
perfect.
we basically swapped. She then reviewed the treatment draft while I reviewed the numbers. And we sent that out. And she, after a little bit of negotiation over a few hours, we landed at a over a $15,000 deal for her to shoot for this men's product company. And now that product company job has wrapped, they're wanting to bring her back for a 2-location shoot. One would be in the Caribbean and one would be in California.
Yeah.
So we're looking at another, high 5-figure or more shoot for their luxury line, which is really exciting. So yeah,
It is super exciting.
it's all about that visual presentation. I said to her, what would you have sent out if I didn't, have this treatment deck sitting here? And she's like, oh, I would have just done an estimate and sent it over to them.
Which is difficult, yeah, because then you're just competing on numbers versus like if you also bring this visual aspect to it, you have this whole other realm that you're like putting in front of them. And what I love about this is not necessarily just the figure, but some people might think like these templates you would just use if you're starting out or if you are having trouble pitching. But what we've seen is like this is, a very large campaign that the decks helped bring in. And we've also seen some repped photographers in North America's largest markets using these templates. So I think that says a lot to it's not necessarily just if you're starting or don't know what to send. Like these are people who have been in this industry for decades, work on big jobs, understand that you still have to show things visually, and maybe they're ready to just mix up it, what they send out, look at some different designs or way of doing that.
Yeah, I think historically, I mean, I've been doing this for a really long time. And when I shifted more into commercial work, I didn't know I didn't have a clue what a treatment was. And it wasn't until an art director at an agency sent me a treatment that I actually was like, oh, that's what's in a treatment. And then I started asking other commercial photographers, what goes in a treatment? Like, what would you put in the treatment? And a lot of people are very closed off. They don't want to share their secrets per se.
Yeah.
And if they do, they're like, this is, you got to keep this under lock and key. Don't share this with anyone else. And I understand there is some magic to like what you have figured out or what you've put together. But I think one of the beautiful things of us putting this together is that we're putting something out there that we have seen work for ourselves first and foremost. And we want people to succeed. We want you to get that call back, that nice email that says, wow, this is really lovely and beautiful and
Yeah.
super clear. Because when other people get the win, we all win.
Exactly. And what I also hear in that is like, I think some people could think, well, if I'm going to show you this, you're going to take that idea and go out with it. And with templates, maybe a thought has crossed someone's mind that, oh, everyone's going to be sending the same thing. But what was super interesting when we did the co-design aspect of the workshop is we had 2 templates for capabilities decks. So there was like 1 or 2. Everybody's was so drastically different because one, it's a template, and then you're changing your brand colors, you're changing your fonts. There's multiple layouts for the same sort of things, like a portfolio highlight. There's 4 or 5 different pages you could choose from. So people were picking the page template that worked best for the work that they wanted to showcase. And I was just absolutely blown away by how individual everybody's deck looked and how it was matching them as a photographer and their brand. Like that was really, really special to see come together. And even we had a photographer, Tina, who does like a lot of product. She had this amazing thing that she came up with, like the workflow for how she works on a one page. And I was like, can I use that? Because it was really, really good. So I used the layout that she had, but obviously put my, you know, process and workflow within that. It was really amazing to see everybody bringing some of their skills and showing that in their templates, and allowing other people to sort of bounce ideas or take a little bit here and there. It was just a really supportive environment, and it was really great.
Yeah, I too was really blown away by the variety that we saw. No 2 decks looked the same.
Yeah, yeah,
Even if it was from the same template, like everybody's felt super individual and very unique. By the time you change the colors and they put their images in it and they changed the fonts and maybe moved and tweaked a few things, it was
yeah.
all new. It was all new.
That's what's great about Canva is you can move things around. So I mentioned that I have 4 different decks, and I think I have like maybe 8 different cover pages, really, so I can just drag it in and be like, this is a beverage client, let's drag that in. This is a client who's looking for products in the food realm, let's drag that in. So I love that, it takes a little bit of time at the beginning to set it all up. But once it's there, it saves so much time because you can just drag things into an order and export that particular area, or like within the templates. And I just think it still shows a lot of value and personalization to what the client is after.
I think that's also one of the things that you just said is kind of the upstart, right? The time that it takes to put this all together at the beginning. And it's one of the reasons that I really liked doing the pro track with everybody, because it was like you had this dedicated time where people were all focused on the same task. And it makes me excited to think we're going to run this again for people who want to have that space and container to be really focused on doing just that. And I do think that there is something about doing it in community versus having to do it by yourself, because then you're going to show up not just for yourself, but you're going to show up because you're curious about like, well, what did Rachel do? And what did Shelly do? And, what do I see in their deck that maybe I can use in my deck and vice versa?
We even had like there was some decks in German, which, I couldn't read. But you can still look at the overall flow and still give ideas and take ideas from that too. So I think that really shows, how versatile these are. Because like not every photographer is the same. Like, you know, some people might do consumer goods and commercial more than other people are just doing editorials, or restaurants. Very different in how you want to display um, the type of value you can bring to those clients.
Yeah, we also had a friend who did it in French. She took our deck and she
Mm,
redid a whole pitch for her French clients. And so that was really fun to see as well, because again, she sent it to me and I don't know French.
yeah.
Even though I did translate like 50% of it just to kind of get a flow of like, what is she talking about here?
Mm. Another question that I had people, I mean, I love these conversations. You put something out and people, chat to you on social media. People are like, oh, are you attaching these guides or are you sending them in a link? Um, and I thought that was interesting because I think there's a number of different ways that you can go. And so I had started to put these like studio guides on my website and have like different links for the different types of clients. So I was sending them via link because I wanted like the PDF to look really good and sharp. So that's a big file. And then like smaller bits, where I was like, maybe it's like, I'm going to say like a mini treatment, just a little bit of information about what they were presenting or something that I really wanted to show for that particular client, that I would attach it to the email because it's smaller and it's just very specific to them. So again, these templates just, they can really work for the type of work and visuals that you want to show and like how you work as a photographer, which I think is awesome.
Did you, because I got that same question of like, do you link it
Yeah.
or do you attach it? And I think to your point of look at what the file size is before you send it, because if it is obnoxiously large, more than likely the person receiving it will not get the document. Because their spam will pick it up and then filter it out, especially if it's a corporate client.
Mm-hmm.
So that is why also, I mean, I know we keep harping on like why we love Canva, but another reason is like if you don't want to make a separate page on your website, which you totally can, but Canva allows you to have public links.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And one of the nice things about that is, let's say you put a deck together and you're like, maybe it's more of a proposal of a deck. Like you could say like, this is only going to be good for 7 days. And after 7 days, you can go take down that public link and then they can't access the deck
That is
anymore.
very true.
This is not sponsored by Canva. This is not a
No,
Canva ad. We do not
no,
have an affiliate code for you.
no. It's been It's been game changing, really, because, it is a confidence boost when you just at least hear back from clients and get some kind of feedback and start that conversation. And I've found that I'm much more excited to send out those emails, because I am putting things together visually. It's not just about the figure. And I think you can really see that coming across in the decks and the copy that you use for the email. So, and then if you are hearing back from more people, you're more likely to keep putting the work in. And, it's just its own momentum.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's the other thing that we hear a lot is like, well, how many people should I be reaching out to? How many people should I be pitching to? And if you aren't hearing back, it is really hard to keep putting stuff out there
Hmm.
unless you're someone who comes from a background in sales or you worked in PR and you're constantly pitching for PR. Most of the people I know don't come from that background. And so
Hmm.
you do need to get a little bit of a positive feedback in order to keep doing it.
Totally agree.
So I'm curious, how much of the deck is stuff that you shot for your new portfolio versus how much are you maybe doing a test shoot for to put it in? So when it comes to these decks and pitching, I'm curious. I mean, I know that you just went through this huge portfolio build, but how much is it work that you now have from your portfolio build versus work that you would be doing like a test for that you're putting into these decks that
Hmm.
you're sending out?
I think my studio guide, I am looking at more of the work that I want to be hired for. So there's going to be a mix of portfolio work, but also maybe things that I shot that are relevant for that. So I'll bring in other images, and sometimes there's something that I necessarily don't have that's very, very specific. I might want to bring in some images that I found on Pinterest and make sure the client knows this is like a mood board in terms of the aspect of that. And I think you want to be you just want to think about it in a way to make it really personalized and really show them that you understand what they're asking for. And here's the visuals and the direction that we can go. So it's probably a bit of a mix.
Yeah, I think it's a good clarification because I know that is a question I get a lot is like how much needs to be my work versus how much is like mood board.
I think sometimes it's really obvious if you're like, um, if you want to go in this direction, it'll cost this much, or if you want to go in this direction, here's where you would need to do that. And then you're showing a range of different work. And I usually just put a little, like inspiration images only or whatever, so that the client understands that I'm not presenting my own work, we're really bringing ideas together.
And I think that's the difference between having the inspiration imagery versus like a case study. Here's a case study, and this is stuff I have done, and I did it for this client. If you have that.
So we're going to be running the workshop beginning of Feb. We're going to do another round of the pitch essentials. If you want to come and not just learn about pitching, but also create the decks together, get some feedback on them. We have sample copy in there of things you would say on different pages, but we can really tailor that to what you want to share with specific clients. Hopefully, we have photographers in there who are actively working on a pitch at that point in time so we can really narrow that down, help you figure out what to say in the email versus what to say in the guides.
So I'm really excited to see and hear more from everyone. If you want to drop Rachel and I a DM, you more than welcome to. You can find her over at Two Loves Studio and creativecamp.pro over on Instagram. So you can tag us in your stories, or you could drop us DMs, or you could find us an email. Most of you know how to get a hold of us. It's hello@shellywaldman.com and hello@twolovesstudio.com.
Yes. Amazing. Thank you for having me on the podcast again, Shelly.
Yes. Well, I think this is going to have to turn into a regular, like, hey, what are you
Mm.
seeing in the marketplace? What's working? What's not? I'll have to
Yeah,
check in
that's fun. Let's
quarterly.
do it.
I need to put the fire out for now, but the conversation doesn't have to end here. Come hang out with us on Instagram at creativecamp.pro. Drop your questions, share your thoughts, and tag us in your stories. The more people we gather around the fire, the better the conversation gets. If you'd like to support the show, you can buy us a coffee and sign up for our newsletter. Links are in the show notes below. We'll stoke the fire again real soon, but until then, keep creating, keep connecting, and I'll see you next time around the campfire.